Hi, Gene Burnett from GeneBurnett.com. Hey, I want to talk a little bit today about something that's really, I think, really helpful and important in physical movement. That I notice a lot of people, particularly my beginning students, you know, when someone first comes to start lessons with me, very rarely can people do this simple thing. It takes a little time, it takes a little practice, but man, when you get it right, it's really, really wonderful. And the simple thing is to just be able to separate your waist from your hips, to have these be two different things. They work together, sometimes they move together, but sometimes they don't. And it's nice sometimes to be able to separate them so that your waist can move separately from your hips. So what do I mean by your waist? I mean the soft tissue here above the hips, this area here. So here I'm going to move my waist and I'm not going to move my hips. So this is me moving my waist, but notice my hips are not moving. These things are staying pretty much in the same place. So when you think waist, right, think ribs. I have a friend who's a Feldenkrais practitioner and he turned me onto this and it's really helpful. Think moving your ribs, because that's kind of what your waist does. It kind of moves the rib cage around a little bit. The hips are down below. Now I'm going to move my hips without moving my waist. So that's this down here. My waist is staying relatively still. My hips down here move here. So these are two different things, right? But for a lot of people, when they turn their waist, they turn their hips. So they turn their waist, which is generated from the core here, not down in the feet. It's generated in the core. The movement ends up being rooted in the hips, which is not a great root because the hips are sitting on two ball socket joints, not that stable. So when I turn my waist, my hips turn also, and guess what? My knees start twisting around. When I see Tai Chi that I don't like and that I think is bad, it's almost always because the person doing it is twisting their knees. There's all kinds of different styles and style differences, and I just say, oh, those are different. They're not bad. I don't use the bad word too often, but when I see something as bad, I mean it's bad for your body. You'll get injured if you keep doing it. So don't twist your knees. A great exercise to learn to separate your hips from your waist so that there are two different but connected things is, I'm going to step forward a little bit, I hope you can still see me, is to do this simple exercise here. When I see people do this, it's almost always not done right, or it's done right if you want to injure yourself. And what people do is this. So they're turning their waist and their hips, and look at my knees. They're collapsing. You can see it in my feet too. My feet collapse. So how to do this exercise without twisting your knees. So you take your feet a little bit wider than your hips. And I usually have people start by just feeling the ground under their feet and feeling the space here. So this is not caving inwards. This is rotated out a little bit here. There's space here. And feel this crease where the torso meets the thighs. Have a crease there. It's the same crease you make when you downhill ski or when you lift weight or even when you just sit in a chair, except imagine you just started to sit in the chair but then you stopped. So you're like, it's a half sitting kind of position. Tailbone is tucked under just a little bit, ribs lifted just slightly, chin down a little bit, head back a little bit, arms shrugged back a little bit to your sides. And I'll just have my students just shift their weight back and forth like this. So I'm just shifting my weight straight from side to side. And when I get to the side, like when I get to your right, my left, I want to let my hips slide over just a little bit so my knee is really pointed the same direction as my toes, and I'm really over this leg, so it's fairly easy to lift the other foot. If I push almost there, I lift that foot and I fall. If I let my hip just slide over, kind of like I was standing in a doorway, and my arms are here, and I'm just tapping my hip on the edge of the doorway, like that. It's not this, right? That's too far. But it's not this, it's not far enough. It's a little slide of the hip over to the side. So your feet are rooted, your legs are providing the power, back and forth. This shift of your weight is going to be going on the entire time while you're doing the swing, right? So this shift of the weight is the root and power of the whole thing. The waist is going to turn and direct that from side to side. But for most people, once they start turning the waist, the hips start turning. So what I'll do is I'll have my students shift their weight back and forth like this, and then I'll tell him or her to stop and just sit in the middle. Don't move. Your hips are in cement, and just turn the waist like this. I'm hoping I don't smack myself into the table behind me. Just a really soft turn like this. My arms are relaxed. Now here I'm powering this with my waist. This is not ideal, but I just want them to get used to the idea that the waist can turn without the hips. So the hips are just sitting there in cement down, from the hip down, and I'm just letting my waist turn like this. Then I'll just say, okay, shift your weight to the left, or to the right, then shift your weight to the left. So underneath this motion, the weight is just shifting back and forth. If I stop my hands, this is still going on. Just simply shifting the weight back and forth. Nothing too fancy. Then I just add this on top. And usually what will happen is people will do this. They'll kind of control the movement with their arms like this, which is okay, because they're not twisting their knees at least. And then I'll say, okay, let your arms go, swing with some abandon, and they'll do that, and then their knees start twisting, because they're throwing that momentum into it, and that momentum needs to be countered or your knees are going to twist. So then I'll say, okay, wait, keep your knees over your toes, just shift your weight back and forth, and then they'll start controlling the hands again. So you let go of your hands, and then you end up letting go of your hips. You hold on to the hips, and you end up holding on to your hands. And so you go back and forth until your body starts to integrate this and figure out that it can be firm down here and loose here, so that you can have the relaxed waist and the swing and still keep the space between your knees and still keep your weight moving back and forth. Another thing that will happen is people will start doing this. And my weight is moving back and forth, but just barely. I'm doing this. Just barely shifting it back and forth like that. I want to have more than that. I want to have my weight really moving from side to side like that. One thing that helps too is to notice that when this elbow moves back behind me in that direction, this knee wants to come in. Don't let it. Don't let it follow. So whatever elbow is moving behind you, the opposite knee pushes out just a little bit. If I don't push out a little bit and collapse it, it does that. I have to do this. When I go to this side, if I don't firm that outer thigh, that's what happens. This is what I want to happen, right? So I want to be able to shift my weight back and forth and still release my waist and still release my hands. So I've been doing this forever, so I can turn, pretty much all the way around behind me and still keep this pretty loose, and I'm not turning my hips. But for most people, just doing it like this is a challenge enough. If you let your head go, the turn will increase. If you let your hands go, the turn will increase. The more the turn increases, the more you've got to pay attention to the opposite leg and not let it collapse. So don't let the opposite leg collapse. I'm turning this way, don't let that leg collapse. I turn this way, don't let that leg collapse. Keep this space here. And a good way to test that is just when you're doing the swing like this, periodically stop the hands and notice if this is still going on down below. So you still want this back and forth, and you want also above it the waist, soft, swing, easy turn like that. Great for your spine, great for your legs, great for your feet and leg connection to the ground. Terrific exercise to do if you've been sitting at a computer for a while or sitting driving a car for a while. To get up and do this at a rest stop or something is just fantastic, or just to take a break from the computer or from sitting in anything and do. But got to keep that space, got to keep this back and forth going the whole time, and most importantly, when you add the turn, don't turn your hips. Your hips turn your knees. So keep the knees pointing the same direction as the toes. A good test, notice how your feet feel on the ground. If your outsides of your feet are getting light when you go to the sides, that's a sign that you're turning your hips or collapsing the knee in a little bit. The feet should feel glued flat to the ground. They should stay parallel. If you look down at your feet after a minute and they're not parallel anymore, then you're probably twisting your hips a little bit. So a little bit is okay. It's not going to kill you, but you really don't want to get into doing this. you know, that kind of thing. And we don't want to feel like we're powering this from the waist. We don't want to feel like the waist is getting tired. Your legs should get tired when you do this. Your thighs can get tired because they're the pistons. They're the power generators. The waist is just directing that power, amplifying it a little bit, and telling it where to go. And of course, this is useful martially. These kind of turns are useful martially. And I'm not saying don't ever move your waist and hips together. No way. I mean, we move the waist and hips together all the time. But in this exercise, and when you do that, when you move your waist and your hips together, you got to adjust your feet. Because when your hips move, your foot has to move. So say you're doing a Tai Chi movement, and you're going to turn your waist and your hips to face that way. This foot comes in, otherwise you're going to collapse your knee. So when the hips move the knees, which is fine as long as the feet also move. If the feet move, then it's all good. It all moves together. So the foot and the knee move together or don't move together, but they don't move separately. If they move separately, then you're in trouble. So yeah, a nice exercise to do. Hopefully it will be of help to you to see this video. A brief announcement that I'm going to make at the end of all my videos these days. I don't have ads on my videos anymore. If you would like to support me in what I do and try to help me make up for the money that I lost or that I'm losing not having ads on my videos, which isn't much, but it is something, and every little bit helps. I have a PayPal donation link down below in the description, so if you feel like buying me a cup of coffee or just dropping me a tip every once in a while, if these videos are valuable to you and helpful, that would be great, wonderful, and appreciated. If not, no sweat, no problem. I'm putting these out there free because I'm hoping that maybe what I do musically or Tai Chi wise or nature wise, hopefully that will, you know, help you out. That's my motivation here. So thanks very much for watching. Appreciate it. You can also visit GeneBurnett.com.